Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and finance. This week, the growth markets. We start in China, the world's factory. But as the latest numbers come out, we look at two things. Are they any good? And can we believe them? And then it's Africa. How does Egypt return to growth? The days before the revolution and all the uncertainty that's followed. And also, how does sub-Saharan Africa harness all its natural resources into something that will grow the region and not just the company's pockets? And making money in sport, lots of money. Rory McIlroy becomes the $100 million man thanks to his new friends at Nike. Hello everyone, lots to get through this week, and we want to start with the big one, the Chinese economy, which we do watch so closely because of the huge effect it has on the rest of the world. Now, the official news is that China's economy picked up speed in the last 3 months of 2012, but the effects of the global slowdown are clearly still there. China actually grew at its slowest annual rate in 13 years, and the World Bank's already cut its forecast for 2013. For the record, here are the numbers. Growth for the last 3 months of 2012 was at 7.9%, an increase after 7 consecutive quarters of decline. But it still means China's overall growth for 2012 was only 7.8%. And then there's that World Bank revision we mentioned, now forecasting 8.4% growth in 2013, down from 8.6% on fears of higher inflation and weaker exports. That, as I say, is all the official word. And really that's our focus this week, whether the official word is accurate, comprehensive, transparent enough for us to make good, strong conclusions about the state of China's economy. Before we do that, here's some thoughts from the Economist's intelligence unit about the year ahead.
I would say there are two important things to be looking at China's economy right now. One is the property market. The government made it very clear that they do not want to see the property price to skyrocket again like a few years ago. And so they're still taking a very tight control hand over this. The other one would be the export market. We did see that for 2012, the export growth only grew less than 8%. So that's obviously not a very good thing. But we are actually looking at a back to double-digit growth into 2013.
So we've got numbers and we base our analysis and our theories upon those numbers, but we want to dig a little deeper into that idea, and we're going to do it with Jorge Mariscal. He's the Chief Investment Officer for Emerging Markets at UBS Wealth Management. Thank you for your time. You know, I don't want to talk about the specific data here. I want to talk about this idea of the data and the quality of the data and the numbers we get out of China. You know, China's so important to the rest of the world. What it does impact so many other places. Do we believe, are you happy with the accuracy of the numbers we get out of China?
Well, as you said, what happens in China has a very significant impact on the demand for commodities, exports from the region, Asia itself. So while we may be a bit skeptical about the data that gets released by the Chinese authorities, there's ways in which analysts can verify whether some of those data are in fact correct. We know that what imports China reports are the exports from another country. We also know that companies record how much electricity they consume. So there are indirect ways of verifying, but with any data, especially from a centralized economy, we have to be skeptical and look for ways in which we can confirm or deny the trends that those data suggest.
So then do we just have to sort of accept it as this is just the way it is for now? Maybe China's not the most open society in the world. Maybe the independent analysis isn't so forthcoming. We just carry on and accept it as it is for now.
I'm afraid so. The data, it's official data. There's difficult ways to go down into the guts of the numbers. But like I said, there's independent ways that analysts can verify by looking at the impacts of those trends on other countries that interact with China. Like I mentioned already, the example of exports. The numbers that China reports on international trade can be easily verified because they are the international trade of the countries that trade with China. And other figures can be also independently verified. Like we know companies in the stock market release reliable figures, and they can tell us how much they're using in transportation, in shipping costs, and all of these things can be put together into this puzzle to try to figure out the validity, or at least the strength of the trends that the data that are released by the Chinese suggest.
Well, from the data that we do have, there is one number that keeps coming up. I've seen it in a UBS report here, 8%. 8% being the number we could expect for growth from China in 2013, and 8% almost being like a bit of a threshold as well, if I say, for the Chinese government, a level that they're happy with. But if it was to dip below that, there might be a few internal problems for China there. Would you be, comfortable, I guess is the word, would you be comfortable at 8% growth for China, especially considering how slow growth is in other parts of the world?
I would be more than comfortable with 8%. Let's just not forget that China, if we look at China in the last 5 years, it has grown significantly. So in 2007, before the global financial crisis, China's economy was around 4 trillion in size, 4 trillion US dollars. Today, by the end of this year, 2013, the Chinese economy will be almost $9 trillion in size as GDP. So even a 6% or a 7% growth of the Chinese economy, given its sheer size today, have the biggest impact it has ever had on the global economy.
So this does look like a controlled slowdown to you, because for so long we had that tearaway growth in China while they were building for the Olympic Games and the World Expo as well. They were doing all of this sort of stuff. And we always said it just can't sustain this. Do you think this is by design rather than accident, this slowdown?
I believe so. I mean, certainly the slowdown that we witnessed in 2011 and 12 was engineered to deflate what had become something close to a real estate bubble. They were successful in popping that bubble up and in bringing their economy to a more sustainable rate of growth. So I think the slowdown is relatively good news in that it becomes a more balanced type of growth and therefore more sustainable for the medium and long term.
Just a final thought, Jorge, very quickly. You mentioned the way that China's changing. I think you called it a middle market economy or something to that effect. When will we actually stop calling China an emerging market? You've made the point that it is such a huge economy now. It's not emerging, it's effectively emerged already. What point do we stop calling it that emerging economy?
Yes, that's a kind of a technical definition. From a per capita income point of view, you could say that it's approaching a more developed level. However, the definition of emerging market includes other factors such as the access to foreign exchange, the freedom of movement of capital within the country, the full convertibility of the currency, controls over who invests in the stock market. And China is a long ways from being fully open to international investors. As you know, the A-share market, for example, is not available to foreign investors. The renminbi, the currency, is not fully convertible yet. So there are a number of factors that still would characterize China as an emerging market, even though the per capita income is obviously becoming more of a middle class level.
Jorge Mariscal from UBS Wealth Management talking China with us. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And now to Egypt, which used to be a great growth market in Africa, but it's really struggling to recover from those financial losses during the Arab Spring. It now really has two problems. One is a reliance on aid. Qatar's doubled its contribution, and Cairo is still negotiating that key $4.8 billion deal with the IMF. But there's also the suffering of its people, many of whom continue to live hand to mouth. Shireen Tandros has our report now from Cairo.
It's become a common scene in the new Egypt. Street battles, demonstrations and strikes. The political turmoil has taken a huge toll on the economy. The government has tried to reassure people in the last few months that the country is not going bankrupt. But the rising price of basic goods, long petrol queues and difficulty finding work has hit people hard.
Before, things were expensive but stable. Now, things keep getting more expensive and we don't understand why or where it's going.
We are living on lentils and beans. We can't even afford chicken and meat anymore. They've become too expensive.
Things are very slow. Buying and selling is not what it used to be. I just pray the authorities help us.
The Egyptian central bank says foreign reserves are at a critical minimum, enough to pay for just 3 more months of imports. Egypt is heavily reliant on imports for basic food like wheat, sugar and tea. The Egyptian pound shed 4% of its value against the dollar in just 2 weeks. Egypt has borrowed from regional allies, including $4 billion from Qatar, double its original pledge. Last year, a much-needed $4.8 billion loan was negotiated with the International Monetary Fund, but it was stalled when Egypt hit yet another political crisis, this time about the constitution.
The other donors who are multilateral, mainly multilateral, like the World Bank, like the African Development Bank, will not proceed with providing Egypt with any loan except after the IMF loan is concluded. So I would say that the Qatari assistance is of a political nature. The IMF is more of a technical, economic nature, and that's needed for Egypt to ensure confidence in the Egyptian economy.
The IMF say in principle it's ready to start releasing the money, but it needs the government to start implementing what it's calling measures to achieve fiscal and external sustainability. This involves cutting subsidies and raising taxes. The president recently rescinded a first round of tax hikes on items like cigarettes, alcohol and cooking oil, fearing a backlash. The Egyptian government is in a very difficult position. In order to secure the IMF loan and lift Egypt out of this economic crisis, they're going to need to take some very difficult measures that are going to prove unpopular here on the street with people whose daily lives are being affected by all these price changes. Weeks or maybe months away from parliamentary elections, you can see why the government is reluctant to act. Without action, though, the country is sinking further into debt, and the measures needed to fix the situation are becoming increasingly drastic. Shanine Tadros for Counting the Cost in Cairo.
Growth is also a big thing in sub-Saharan Africa, where the name of the game is making the most of all those energy reserves, but also trying to avoid the mistakes of the past, where those reserves and the cash got squandered. Let's put it on the map for you first of all, and in some sort of order as well. We start at Nigeria, Africa's largest oil producer, with a daily output of 2.4 million barrels of oil a day. You've got Angola next, which puts out 1.8 million barrels a day. And then Sudan, this is a little different. You've got the third largest reserves, but most of it is based there in the south. And then refined in the north, which is of course now a separate country. And indeed last January, South Sudan halted its oil production over a conflict on fees with Sudan. So that's the top three there. Some of the other places, we've got Ghana. This is actually Africa's newest oil exporter with around 90,000 barrels a day. Uganda has got reserves which could surpass by 2015 about 200,000 barrels of oil a day. Notice so far though, we've actually only talked about oil. And there is another major player we have to consider, and that is natural gas. Mozambique, first of all, which has huge gas resources that have been discovered, deposits of up to 100 trillion cubic feet of gas. TCF is how they call it in the industry. That is actually enough to supply Germany, Britain, France and Italy for a decade. And Tanzania as well, that's got natural gas reserves of 33 trillion cubic feet following recent massive offshore gas discoveries there. Now, this gas could be a game changer. At least that is what Nosizwe Nokwe-Macamo thinks. She is the CEO of the Petroleum, Oil and Gas Corporation of South Africa, PetroSA. She was here in Doha for the World GTL Congress and dropped by the studio earlier this week for a bit of a chat.
The difference between the price of oil and the price of gas is the largest in 40 years. We're starting to see that there's more interest actually in GTL for that reason. Really, it's driven by that reason, but also, of course, for environmental reasons, because if you produce transportation fuels from the GTL processes, they tend to be more environmentally friendly fuels. And also because we are now finding that there are a lot of discoveries of gas in non-traditional countries, as it were. Like, for example, recently in our region, there's Mozambique and there's Tanzania. In fact, the gas that has been discovered in Mozambique is really, the reserves are so huge that they could be a game changer for the whole continent.
Okay, well, now that's this point I wanted to make, because it's very easy. If you've got natural gas supplies, you can export it and make a ton of cash.
Correct.
That's very easy. But I guess if there's, obviously, South Africa, if it's in Mozambique and all these places, it should be something which could help those countries and help the continent.
Definitely.
How?
With this new frontier of gas in Africa, we need to utilize that gas in the African countries to ensure that we use that for local development and not just for export of LNG, but utilize it, put GTL plants where you can and produce the transportation fuels. And also, by the way, you could also use it for power generation. So there are many uses. You can also use it as a petrochemical, for petrochemicals, so you can have petrochemical hubs. This obviously would go a long way in terms of job creation. What we're doing is we're engaging with our partners, the NOCs in the region, to try and look and say, how can we actually use the natural resource that we know is there from Mozambique, through Mozambique, which luckily it's neighboring quite a few countries which are part of the SADC community. And how can we use the expertise, the sort of operational excellence that we have to be able to jointly, in a regional manner, unlock the development in that area.
So is there enough of a growth market for GTL in SA, in South Africa, to contribute to real jobs growth?
For you to create jobs, you need quite a few things in place. One of them is that you've got to be able to have the inputs so that you've got energy. As you know, South Africa is one of the countries that is energy constrained. And one of the things that we need to do is to deconstrain the energy issue. So you could create in construction phase. This is the thing about those type of plants. During the construction phase, you can create quite a few jobs. But when it's operating, obviously, the number of jobs that you've created have reduced.
I'm thinking almost a comparison of building stadiums for the World Cup in 2020. It's a great idea,
yes,
but once it's there, you need more sustainable jobs.
But here is the thing: if you are able to switch the outflow of foreign exchange and change that to money that can be reused in the country and invested, that's already starting to say something. The other thing, of course, you should be doing is finding out how can you change the energy balance, or how can you increase the access to energy, because once you've increased the access to energy, you're then able to open up other industries.
Do people share this idea? Do, more importantly, the government decision makers in South Africa, in Africa, do they understand this potential and that it needs to be put to work properly and the potential not lost in the pursuit of, quick money of selling it overseas?
I think they do, because we have agreements between ourselves and the National Oil Company of Mozambique. We've got a memorandum of agreement where we're jointly working on the energy master plan for Mozambique, which, of course, as I said, is where all the other countries are going to be able to also benefit from the resource. So we do have an agreement which was signed when the two presidents met. So from a government perspective, there is that support.
I hope it goes well for you. Nosizwe Nokwe-Macamo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
We've got another guest with us here this week on Counting the Cost. Very pleased to have Joanna Gajarowska with us, of course, from Al Jazeera's sports team. And Joe's been on Counting the Cost many times before with stories from World Cup and FIFA business and all these sorts of things. But never before have you brought me a $100 million man who is also the world's top golfer.
And it's happened this week. It's really been one of our top stories.
Not surprising either, because, in a world where we talk about countries which don't have a lot of money, companies apparently do, and they apparently think, in Nike's case, spending this much money on one man is worthwhile. This is a good investment, apparently.
Well, Nike have often courted top celebrity sportsmen, but it hasn't always paid off for them, and courting these celebrities really has its inevitable risks. I just want to take you over here and go through some of Nike's top deals over the years. Last year, Nike severed ties with cyclist Lance Armstrong after more than a decade. They'd paid him more than $40 million over the years for his endorsement, but the doping saga put an end to that. Well, golfer Tiger Woods has been with Nike since he turned pro in 1996. 4 years later, he signed a contract extension with them worth $20 million a year. And even when revelations over his private life emerged, well, Nike stuck by him while sponsors like Accenture, Tag Heuer and Gillette walked away. Now, though, it's the new golf world #1, Rory McIlroy, who's joined their stable. He has joined them on a massive sponsorship deal. The contract is worth around $100 million over 5 years. That's about $50,000 a day. Well, I spoke to him and the head of Nike Golf, Cindy Davis, and began by asking Rory if the deal puts extra pressure on him to perform.
No pressure at all. I'm just very excited to be a part of the Nike family, and it's something that I've been excited about for quite a while, and now that it's officially announced, it'll just be great to get 2013 underway and play some golf. But no pressure at all. I'm just excited about it, and I can't wait to get started.
Cindy, what does Nike get out of this deal? I mean, what do you see in someone like Rory McIlroy that's important to your brand?
Well, obviously, Nike is a company that's built on working with the best athletes. And with every athlete that we have the opportunity to work to develop product and to support their performance so that they're the best they can be, and then obviously to tell inspiring stories out in the marketplace. So it's not often that an athlete like Rory comes along in a sport, and it was absolutely the right fit. He's a classic Nike athlete, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have him as part of Team Nike.
Beyond the money, though, what's in it for you, Rory? Why associate yourself with someone like Nike? Why not build your own brand?
Well, as Cindy said, the best athletes in the world are always, I've always been connected to Nike, whether it's Tiger Woods or, Roger Federer, Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo, LeBron James. It seems like all the best athletes in the world are with Nike, and I wanted to be a part of that group and on that list, and I'm excited to be a part of it now.
And of course, you're inspiring a new generation of boys and girls to take up the sport of golf. Are you comfortable, though, being a role model both on and off the course?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes with the territory, and I'm in the public eye and in the spotlight quite a lot, and I'm comfortable with that role. I'm here to play the best golf that I can, and if that means that inspires boys and girls to pick up a golf club, then that's a great thing, and hopefully I can set a good example for them too.
Ever since you turned professional, parallels have always been drawn between you and Tiger Woods. Do you feel like you're taking over from him as the biggest star in golf, or do you expect a big comeback from him later on this year?
No, not at all. I mean, we are, sharing the stage, and we've talked about it, and we're very, very comfortable with what's going on here. And I think you saw in the advert that we shot that we have fun together, and we're going to do exciting things at Nike. So I fully expect Tiger to play as well as he has. He showed a lot of signs of it in 2012, and I think 2013 could be a really exciting year for golf.
Cindy, a question to you now, because golf's really experienced a boom in terms of prize money, sponsorship deals, relatively short space of time. Why do you think that is?
I think, golf's an exciting sport, and it's a sport that is certainly growing in wherever there's a growing middle class, and you're seeing it grow in parts of Asia. And now that golf is also an Olympic sport, you're seeing more and more interest for the sport. So we actually at Nike feel like it's an exciting time to be part of golf. And when you have the two most iconic, exciting, energizing athletes as part of your stable, really you couldn't ask for anything better.
Finally, Rory, you're in Abu Dhabi in the build-up to the first major of the season. What are you expecting to achieve in 2013?
Obviously the last couple of years have went very well for me, winning a major in both 2011 and 2012, and I want to try and continue that trend this year. But if I give myself one goal this year, it would be to contend in all four majors. I only contended in one last year, and luckily I was able to win it. But going forward, I'd love to give myself a chance at all four next year, and hopefully take one or two of them.
Well, best of luck, Cindy and Rory. Thanks very much for speaking to us here at Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Yeah, he would have you believe it's not about the money, wouldn't he?
Well, that's what he said in his news conference, but it is an awful lot of money.
It's $100 million, for goodness sake.
I know. Well, if Nike wanted to come and sponsor me to play golf, then I'm open to all offers.
Right, well, we've popped your name on screen, your Twitter address, so they can get in touch with me. Joe, thank you so much for that. That is our show for this week. Plenty more for you online, though, at aljazeera.com/business. That is where you'll find the latest business headlines. Also, a link to the CTC page. You can watch this or any of our previous episodes again. Then when you want to get in touch, you can tweet me at KamalAJE or our business editor at copy to Oliver Ali, or drop us an email. countingthecost@aljazeera.net is our address. Just a quick word about next week. We're in Davos with a special debate program. 6 world leaders and business people on stage at the World Economic Forum, with yours truly as the moderator. So we hope you'll join us for that one next week. That is it, though, for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santa Maria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.